Right before being executed by a firing squad, a convicted murderer looked his executioner dead in the eye and said, "Just do it." Those 3 words, spoken in the final seconds of a man's life, would echo into history and become the backbone of Nike's empire. But behind the brand that sells victory, confidence, and greatness is a story soaked in risk, rebellion, and cold-blooded marketing genius. By the end of this video, you won't just see Nike differently, you'll learn how to turn darkness into power and use it to build your own legacy. You'll learn how to use the same tactics that Nike has used to level up your company and your life. Have you ever had a crazy idea, one so wild it felt like no one else would ever believe it, but you couldn't shake it? That's where the story starts. Oregon, in the 1950s, a stubborn track coach named Bill Bowerman is cutting up shoes in his garage like a mad scientist, trying to make his runners faster by ounces, by inches. He's obsessed, the kind of obsessed you have to be if you want to change something. One of his runners, Phil Knight, quiet, smart, he knows he'll never be a world-class athlete, but deep down, he's got that feeling. The same feeling that you might have right now. The one that whispers, "I don't know how yet, but I'm meant to build something, to be somebody." Phil didn't have money, he didn't have a team, but he had something that every person watching this has felt at least once. An idea that just won't go away. A voice that whispers, "What if this actually works?" Most people ignore that voice, but Phil didn't. He got on a plane. He was 24 years old, just out of school, no business, no connections, no map. He books a flight to Japan just by himself, with nothing but a made-up company name, Blue Ribbon Sports. He walks into a factory in Kobe, Japan, Onitsuka Tiger, and somehow this no-name kid from Oregon convinces them to give him US distribution rights. There was no logic to it, no proof that he could even deliver, but he believed. And belief is what got him in the room. That's something every underdog needs to hear. You don't need a perfect plan, you need a reason to keep going when no one's watching. So then he flies back to Oregon with a few sample shoes stuffed in his suitcase, goes straight to his old coach, Bowerman, shows him the quality, the feel, the potential. And Bowerman, the same guy he used to slice open shoes in his garage, says just 2 words, "I'm in." They each put up $600. That was it. That was the launch. No investors, no safety net, no second chances. Phil worked a 9-to-5 accounting job just to survive. At night, he sold shoes out of the trunk of his green Plymouth at track meets. 1 pair at a time, 1 conversation at a time. Meanwhile, Bowerman was in his workshop, ripping soles off, stitching them back hand by hand, chasing speed like it was gold. This wasn't a company yet. It was just 2 guys working what they had, chasing something they couldn't quite explain. Not fame, not money, just a gut feeling that they could do better. Then came Prefontaine, one of Bowerman's running. He started setting the records in their shoes, and suddenly people started asking questions. Blue Ribbon Sports sold $8,000 worth of sneakers that first year. That doesn't sound like much, but when you've built it from scratch, it's everything. By 1969, they hit $1 million in sales. But right as things started taking off, something cracked. The factory that helped launch their dream was about to turn on them. So what happened next? Phil had to make a move that would either end everything or become the beginning of Nike. You ever feel like everything's finally starting to click and then the bottom drops out? That's what happened to Phil Knight. His company was growing, selling over $1 million worth of shoes. Then he finds out his only supplier, Onitsuka Tiger, is making side deals with other distributors behind his back. No warning, no loyalty. Just quiet knife in the ribs. Phil had 2 options, beg or build. So he did the only thing that most people wouldn't. He walked. No more Tigers, no more backup, just him, Bowerman, and the decision to start their own brand from scratch. And the clock was already ticking. Jeff Johnson's burned out, staying up late, trying to name something that didn't even exist yet. One night, he wakes up from a dream, grabs a pen, and writes 1 word, Nike. Phil doesn't love it, but they got 24 hours to print boxes. So he signs off. Nike it is. They needed a logo next. No design agency, no branding budget, just a college student named Caroline and a $35 check. Make it look fast, they said. She draws a swoosh. That's it. That's the logo. If you ever launched something you didn't feel ready for, this is your story. They didn't love the name. They didn't love the logo. They didn't even have time to think about it. But they moved, because when you're broke and betting on yourself, waiting is the only enemy. While boxes are getting printed, Bowerman's in his kitchen staring at a waffle. He's not eating it, he's staking traction. He sees the grid, the grip, the potential, pours molten rubber into his wife's waffle iron, melts the thing shut, and then pulls out the first Nike waffle sold. They didn't do focus groups, They didn't wait for approval. They glued that sole to a nylon upper and hit the Olympic trials in Eugene. The runners laced up, took off, and immediately felt the difference. Light, fast, gritty. By 1974, the Nike waffle trainer was on the shelf. No hype campaign, no celebrity endorsement, just a damn good shoe. And people started talking. Nike wasn't a middleman anymore. They were inventors. And if you ever launched with a design you didn't love, if you've ever been embarrassed by your first version, if you've ever felt like it wasn't ready, but you shipped it anyway, you're not failing. You're doing exactly what Nike did. Because that logo you hate, that pitch that you rushed, that launch that felt too early, that's where the real ones separate. Nike didn't start with clarity. They started with pressure, instinct, and zero time to waste. And that's what made the difference. But just when Nike started to find their rhythm, they got blindsided, not by Adidas, but by leg warmers, neon, and a British brand with a whole new game. Your grind, your struggle, you take the shot, and finally, it lands. That was Nike in 1984. They weren't the biggest, they weren't the flashiest, but they saw something in a rookie nobody else took seriously. Michael Jordan. Jordan didn't want Nike. He was Adidas all day, Converse in college.
I never wore Nike shoes until I signed a Nike contract. All through college, we wore Converse. Up to that point, my favorite shoe was an Adidas shoe.
Nike was still the weird brand, just a track company trying to play ball. But one guy at Nike believed in the future no one else saw. And he said the words every builder eventually has to say, let's bet the house. They offered Jordan a deal so insane, it made headlines. A signature shoe line for a rookie? Everyone thought it was reckless. Nike, they called it strategy. The Jordan 1 dropped in 1985. Black, red, and bold. The NBA bans it instantly. Nike didn't flinch. They covered the fines and flipped the ban into the campaign. This shoe was so dangerous, the league had to ban it. That's branding. That's culture, and it worked. Every kid wanted the shoe, not because of how it was made, but because of what it meant. They weren't just buying sneakers, they were buying rebellion, confidence, and identity. And that's what Nike mastered. They didn't sell gear, they sold belief. They built the blueprint, the product, plus the athlete, plus the story equals a movement. From Jordan to Bo Jackson, from Serena to Tiger, every drop, every ad, it wasn't about features, it was about emotion, about you becoming something bigger. And if you've ever tried to get someone to feel what you're building before they fully understand it, you've already walked Nike's path. You don't need to be a global brand to get this. You just need to have created something with meaning. But here's the truth most people never tell you. Success doesn't make things easier, it makes things louder. And when people start watching, they don't just cheer, they dig. Because behind every product that wins, there's a price someone paid to make it actually happen. And Nike, they were about to feel the truth hard. By the mid-90s, Nike was everywhere, on feet, on walls, on screen. But while the brand was booming, something dark was boiling underneath it. Reporters started asking questions, not about the shoes, but about the hands stitching them. What they found hit like a gut punch. Sweatshops, child labor, 6-year-olds working for 6 cents an hour. It wasn't marketing anymore, it was reality. And suddenly, the same swoosh that made people feel powerful started making them feel complicit. College campuses erupted, sneakers were burned, protesters chanted Nike's name, not in admiration, but in anger. And the worst part, Nike's first response was the same excuse too many builders give. We don't own those factories. Technically true, but the public doesn't care about their contracts. They care about accountability. And if you've ever grown faster than you can manage, if you've ever looked up and thought, damn, did I miss something? You know that feeling? Because when you're building at speed, you're not always watching every corner. And sometimes that corner collapses. Phil Knight had a choice. He could deny it, defend it, spin it, or own it. In 1998, he stood on stage and said it plain. The Nike product has become synonymous with sweatshops. That wasn't a soundbite, that was ownership. And from that moment on, they went to work. Factory audits, age restrictions, policy supply chains, third-party inspections. It wasn't perfect and it wasn't instant, but it was real. And that's what matters, because anyone can look clean when things are going up. But what do you do when the spotlight shifts and the thing you built starts burning at the edges? Do you run or do you rebuild? So Nike rebuilt slowly, publicly, with criticism in one ear and conviction in the other. And if you've ever had to fix something with people watching, if you've ever had to apologize while still trying to grow, if you've ever had to learn in real time and earn back the trust that you thought you had, then this part is about you. Nike didn't just survive, they evolved, and they learned what each builder eventually has to. Hype fades, but character compounds. So, after all that, you'd think they'd play it safe, stick to the shoes, stay in their lane, but no. Nike's next move, it had nothing to do with sneakers. It almost split the entire country in half. If you've ever built something from scratch, you know the real work starts after it works. Nike didn't stop when they made it. They looked at the top of the mountain and realized they'd have to climb again. The 2000s hit and Nike started moving differently. They weren't just dominating basketball or running, they wanted to own it all. Soccer, tech, culture, and the lifestyle. They bought Converse, partnered it with Apple, and dropped fly knits made of yarn instead of leather. They weren't just making shoes anymore, they were shaping how the world moved. And the marketing, it evolved too. They stopped shouting, started listening. They didn't just run ads, they built communities. Nike Plus Running, the training club, apps that track your hustle. And in the background, every tap, every mile, every win. Was Nike reminding you, we're in this with you? Then came Colin Kaepernick. In 2018, Nike aired the ad that split the country in half. Believe in something, even if it means sacrificing everything. And here's the thing, it wasn't just about football, it was about taking a side and standing there. Nike knew they'd piss people off, but they did it anyways. People burned shoes, swore off the brand, but Nike's core audience, young, diverse, emotional, they showed up. Sales spiked, the stock soared, the ad won an Emmy. And once again, Nike powered the formula, stand for something or stand for nothing. Now pause, think about that for a second. Have you ever played small just to keep people happy? Held back your voice so you wouldn't lose support? Nike didn't. They bet their brand on a polarizing truth. And in doing so, became even more them. That's not just branding, that's the identity. And in a world where everyone's scared of getting canceled, Nike leaned in. Then they dropped another bomb, the Off-White collab, RIP Virgil Abloh. But what he did with Nike turned sneakers into street art. People lined up for hours, they crashed the websites. These weren't just shoes anymore, they were currency in this culture. By 2023, Nike wasn't chasing anyone, they were printing $51 billion a year. Jordan's brand alone made $6.6 billion. That's not a sub-brand, that's a business inside of a business. But even giants get tested. By 2022, the vibe shifted. Nike started relying too much on a quick hit sales, digital tricks, performance marketing, and you could feel it. The brand didn't hit like it used to. They were making money, but not an impact. So they did something most brands never do. They stopped. In 2024, Nike announced a full reset. Less focus on promos, more focus on story. Less chasing the clicks, more building a meaning. They brought in a new CEO, doubled down on NBA and NFL deals, and most importantly, they stopped trying to be everywhere. They started being Nike again. They're pushing hard into sustainability, zero carbon, zero waste. They bought a virtual sneaker company, built Nike Land in the metaverse, but that's just the tech part. What really matters, they're coming back to the message. Just do it. It was never about shoes. It was about what happens when you move before you feel ready. Nike did it when they backed Jordan, when they stood with Kaepernick, when they melted rubber in a waffle iron, when they rebuilt their brand after a public collapse. And if you've ever been afraid to pivot, afraid to take a stand, afraid to launch the next big move, this part of the story is about you. Because eventually, if you grow, you'll face it too. Do I double down on who I am, or do I shrink because it's something safer? Nike's answer was clear. They kept getting bold, kept evolving with conviction, not for everyone, but for the right ones. And that's the play. So now the question isn't what Nike did next, it's what you're gonna do next. Because the same fire that built Nike is the same fire sitting in your chest right now. Let's talk about how to use it. Back in the 70s, there was a man named Gary Gilmore, convicted of murder, sentenced to death in Utah. The press surrendered the story, first US execution in almost a decade. They strapped him to a chair, a black hood over his head, and right before the bullets flew, they asked him if he had any last words. All he said was, just do it. That phrase didn't come from a boardroom, it didn't come from a branding agency, it came from a man staring down the end, saying, stop talking, act. Years later, when Nike needed a slogan, an ad man remembered those words. He changed nothing. He gave it clear context. Just do it. It became a dare. To move before you're ready. To risk before it's guaranteed. To act when the outcome is unknown. And that's the heart of everything we've talked about. Nike's not about shoes, it's about motion, about committing when it's hard, about starting with nothing but conviction and building something the world can't ignore. You've got that same energy in you. You have to stop waiting. The logo doesn't make it legendary, the action does. So write the script, drop the song, launch the site, send the pitch, risk the no, and if the voice in your head starts screaming, yeah, but what if it all goes wrong? You answer the same way Gary Gilmore did. You say, just do it. So if you got value from this video, please hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.